Howdy guys and girls, I just built this amp. So if you want to see me turn this into this, then stick around. Howdy gang! Guess what I'm up to today? No point you really kind of trying to guess because you've already seen the title of this video. So you know exactly what I'm up to. I'm up to amp building, yeah! So on the table down here, you can probably see the chassis to the amplifier and some components. And these are transformers and the circuit board and stuff. This is going to be point-to-point wired. I'm building myself, yeah, an EVH amp, yeah. Why? Because hey, everyone needs an EVH Plexi, right? So before Christmas, I was browsing the interweb, because I wanted to see if there was an amplifier kit which I could build from scratch. And there's a lovely company up in Scotland called Modulus Amplification. And they do a kit for, well, they do various kits actually, but one of the kits was a 69 small box 50 watt Plexi. Very tasty, yeah. So that's the one I have down here on my table right now. But I am gonna add some Eddie Van Halen mods to this amplifier. I did a little bit of research, and the Metropolis Amplifier Forum is absolutely fantastic for information on this. So check out that forum if you want to kind of find out more about the mods. But basically there was one capacitor which was a bypass cap which was added to the second preamp tube, the cathode I think. Look, I'm not too technical on these things. I'm only a little bit technical on these things. And I'm going to make that switchable into the circuit. In fact, because of the switches I have, which are these ones here, they're actually an on-off-on switch. So I'm going to make it three-way switchable. So it's going to be original in the middle position, and then it's going to be the Eddie Van Halen style capacitor bypass cap on one side, and on the other side I am going to try another value of capacitor, bypass capacitor as well, and that's going to give me a third option also, and that value is in between basically the value which is the Eddie Van Halen capacitor value. Yeah, I'm getting out of breath with all of this as well. And no value at all basically, so it's somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to do that. And legend has it that the mid pot on Eddie's Plexi was a 50k pot rather than a 25k pot. Now that was from factory, that was from the Marshall factory. Now back in the day, Marshall didn't have a constant supply of parts. So sometimes they used to run out of stuff, and they used to just see what was in the bucket there and basically just pick it and put it in the amp. Which is why some very old Marshall amps sound absolutely phenomenal and others sound kind of like meh, yeah, it's alright. But the 50k pot apparently rolled off some of the high end, made it a little bit sweeter, and just, I guess, gave it that brown sound. So I'm going to make that switchable into the circuit as well with one of those switches. Again, it's an on-off-on switch, so I'm going to be able to do it two-way. So I'm going to put two values. I haven't decided on the second value that I'm going to put in, but I'm going to do that. So going to do all of that. I've got all my stuff here. The first thing I'm going to do is build up the board here with all the components, and they're laid out really nicely. Really impressed with how these guys have done all the packaging and stuff. Everything is labeled, you know, all these components. These are going to be easy to do. You can probably not see inside the packet, but all of the little bits and pieces here, it's all labeled. Yeah, so it's going to be like Lego. Literally, it's, you know, and I've got a layout here which I got from the Modulus website, and it shows me exactly what to do. So it's time to build a 50 watt Plexi. Yeah, let's get going. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Alrighty, so first task to populate the tag board. Called it a circuit board. It's not a circuit board, it's a tag board. Same difference, I guess. Different method, but this is all point-to-point wired. And Modulus actually do this whole board. It's pre-done. It's already like this with all of the terminals on there. And I have the instructions there. And this is what I was saying about all of the parts. Check it out. Everything is labeled, which is gonna make life really easy. There are the capacitors. I actually upgraded the capacitors to these awesome Sozo capacitors, so they will improve tone. And you have different options with Modulus. You can basically go for the budget package, or you can upgrade things like the power capacitors and also the tone caps and things like that, which is what I did. Alrighty, so everything's laid out here. I'm going to get going with this. So when I do this, I'm going to make sure that I keep everything really, really neat as well. I want this to look really good, as well as sound very good. So I'm going to make sure that I use my little pliers here to do the bends and make sure that these are the correct lengths to fit into the terminals, and then cut down the legs as much as I need them as well. I also have a pen just to mark off what I've done as well. Make sure that everything is on the board. The nice thing about having everything marked up as well is I can very, very quickly get the components that I need, which is showing right here on the layout. If you are enjoying watching this video, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It sure does help me out as a content creator and helps my channel to grow, and it is sure appreciated. Alright, this whole turret board has been populated now. This took a couple of hours to do. I think it took me about 2 hours to properly do it. I probably took my time over it because I wanted everything to be nice and neat and laid out properly. Checked all the solder joints, made sure that they were done properly. I wanted the whole layout to look pretty cool as well, which it does. So next up, I'm going to start working on the chassis. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is hook up the heater wires. Now I've marked off just with a pen where I need to hook up the wires. Now in order to reduce hum, you need to twist the wire together. So I've done a good length of wire which I've twisted together, and there's a really easy way you can do this. Basically, if you connect it at one end, then I hooked this round a doorknob, and then I put the other end into a drill, basically a cordless drill, and then just stretched it out and started to drill, and it basically twists the wire. Nice, quick, easy way to do it. So I'm going to measure out lengths so that they fit exactly. Now ideally what I want to do is make sure that they stay out of the way, so I'm going to make sure that the wires go right up to the edge of the chassis when I do this. So I need to do this for all of the tube sockets. The first ones are done. I'm going to work on the next ones now. Now the good thing about these power tube bases is that each of these terminals actually have two eyelets in them, which makes it easier to put the second wire in. These are a little bit more tricky because you only have one eyelet for each one. Now you may have noticed that I haven't soldered these yet, and the reason I haven't done that is so that I can make sure that the wires get into the eyelets on all of the sockets before I solder everything up. And if I solder it and fill the hole, then I need to basically heat the solder up and try and put the wire in, which is tricky. Alrighty, I'm ready to hook up the power transformer now. I have gone ahead and snipped some of the wires to the correct lengths. It's not the most interesting thing to see, so I did it off camera. And also there's a tiny little grounding wire which goes from the power socket here down to this grounding lug here, which I've just hooked up. I need to solder this in, but one of the things about especially the main grounding there, you need to make sure that the physical connection is good, and I've made sure that the physical connection is good. So I've wrapped the wire around, I've tinned it, wrapped it around, made sure it's nice and secure. So I'm going to go ahead and just hook up these other wires. As you can see, I've done the heater wires as well. I've twisted them. I'm going to basically wrap them around here and hook them up, and a couple of the other wires as well. So I shall get going with that. Alright, so I have the transformers all hooked up. All of the wires are actually connected into the correct places now. And the amp's looking really good. I'm keeping it very, very neat. I've used these tiny little cable ties to put the wires together where they're needed, and at the back here as well, and from these transformers as well. This is the output transformer, this is the power transformer. So only 2 cables from the power transformer still to be connected, and that connects up to the board, which will be situated along here. So what I'm going to do is actually measure out the wires which actually go from the board to the valve bases and also to the pots. So they're all these little wires all along here. Now, I figured I could show you that whole thing, but me basically measuring out all of these tiny little wires and cutting them isn't going to make for very interesting viewing. So I'm going to do that off camera, and then I'll be back when I start soldering stuff in. Alrighty, so this has taken a few days. As you can see, there are wires everywhere coming off this board. Now basically what I did was actually put the board in the chassis, and I measured everything out so that they were all the correct length and they fit the places, and they're routed so that they stay out of the way. So this did take quite a bit of time, and I marked everything up with these little labels. You may be able to see them all over, and they basically tell me where the wires go, which was really helpful. This is the first kit amp that I'm building, so I needed to know all of this. And I've added in some extras. So this is going to be a tone shift switch. Going to be 3 different tone shifts, which is going to be cool to use. Also, the other thing that I did was when I was doing all of this, I marked it off on here, so you'll see all of these ticks. This is actually the second sheet that I did. I've got another one somewhere. There you go. I marked everything off as I went along to make sure that every single connection was accounted for. And then what I did was I took a duplicate of that, and I rechecked everything. And not only did I check it, I checked that it was going to the correct place as well, and that it was connected to the correct place, especially these ones which are to the tube sockets. Made sure that all of these were connected to the correct components, etc, etc. I also went through the whole thing, made sure all the components on the board were in the correct place. There have been a couple of amendments to this here, where you see this 33K and this 500 picofarad. That's where the tone shift switch goes, so I've altered that. And also here, this is the pot for the bias usually, but because I'm installing an external bias, which is there, and there are going to be 3 terminals, 2 red and a ground. And you can see the wires here actually, and they go to tube sockets and also just a ground as well. So I'm running wires from this pot here over to the terminals, the matching terminals here. So that's all installed onto the board as well. These long wires are actually the bias wires, the external bias wires. So the next thing to do is to put the board back into the chassis, and then put all of these into the correct places, and then start soldering up. And once that's done, it will be time to do final checks on the amplifier, and then to fire it up. Getting excited. Alrighty, I've hooked everything up. I've basically put the wires in the correct places. They're not soldered on yet. That's going to be my next job. I've basically just routed everything, made sure that everything is nice and neat, and on this side as well. And now it's time to break out the solder iron and solder these connections on. Alrighty, everything has been done now. So I've installed the external bias points, and there's a knob on the back as well to adjust the bias. And everything has been wired up. Now I was going to put a jumper switch on the inputs here. It was working out pretty complicated, and I have a hole there. I'm actually going to fire up the amplifier, make sure everything is working. Check this out, it looks really super neat. It looks just the way I wanted it to. It's very, very clean. I wanted all of the wires out of the way underneath the board and stuff. And I've double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked everything. In fact, I shall show you. So on this sheet of paper, basically went through everything, made sure all of the points were connected to the correct points. And then I marked it off with a marker. I was doubly making sure that everything was exactly where it needed to be. So hopefully when I fire this up, it will work. So first thing I've got to do is put some tubes into here. It needs a load as well, so I'm going to put a load box onto the speaker output. And then before actually starting up the amp, seeing if it plays, I'm going to check the voltages and make sure that the bias is correct for the power tubes that I'm going to be using. One final mod which my very good friend Stefan Huther at Red Stuff Amps suggested was that I put a couple of 150k resistors across the can cap, which you can see in this picture. Now what this does is discharges the charge which is left in the capacitors after you switch the amplifier off to ground. So it basically makes the amp safe. Now you have to discharge the caps before working on the amp, because after switching the amp off they still hold a lot of charge. So you have to do this before doing anything to the amp, because otherwise it is dangerous to be working on, and you don't want to be poking your fingers around inside the amp when there are a couple of 100 volts floating around inside. So this was an awesome and very, very easy mod to do. These are 2-watt resistors which I've added, and they'll keep the amp safe, and they work fantastically well. They discharge any remaining power to ground, and I've checked this with a multimeter, and it's pretty cool to see.
A couple of things you got to remember when you fire up your amp for the first time.
So huge thanks to Stefan.
I have discovered
for this suggestion.
I haven't turned it on yet, but I have attached my multimeter to the board there, to where the rectifier is. And the first thing I'm going to do is measure the voltage. It should be around 400 volts. Now when you're doing stuff like this, be extremely careful. There are super high voltages going on in here. The other thing you need to make sure of is that the amp is connected to a load. I've got it plugged into this 2 notes captor, which is a load box and an attenuator as well. So that will take the load from the amplifier. Obviously don't turn it on without a load, because that's not safe for the transformers. And the other thing is, when I switch it on, I'm only going to be switching on the on-off switch. The standby is going to remain off at the moment, because I need to check the voltages first. Make sure that the bias is correct for the power tubes. Also, do install the tubes. You can just about see them there, because they will also introduce a load into the amp. Alrighty. Time to plug this in and check if it's working. Fingers crossed. Alrighty, here we go. On-off switch. That's a good sign. The indicator light has come on, and I've got a reading on my meter, 320 volts DC, and I can hear a little bit of a hum coming out of there. So that's a good sign. Yay. I'm just going to let it heat up a little bit, see if the voltage changes. It's actually staying pretty stable at 321, 322 volts there. Brilliant. Okay, that's going to give me an indication of what the bias should be. So I'm going to switch the amp off and then check what the bias voltage should be, and then check the bias voltage, and then adjust it to make sure that the power tubes are safe. Alrighty, I'm going to check the bias now. So I have put the probe on a different point in the amplifier. Basically, if I can show you, you can probably see it down here. Yeah, I'm not going to put my fingers in there because I've been running the amp. I don't want to electrify myself. Alrighty, I've got the multimeter set to 200 millivolts, and I actually have a chart here on my iPad which shows me the range for the voltage which is going through the amplifier. So checking the voltage, we had 322 volts at the rectifier, and the chart is showing me that the correct bias should be between about 39 and 55 millivolts. So that's what I'm going to check now. I'm going to check what the reading says here. In fact, I'm going to hold the multimeter here while I switch the amp on, and we'll have a check. So at the moment it's sitting around 57. Now I have a trim pot at the back which I can actually turn down, and this is going to adjust the bias. So I'm going to aim for about 45 milliamps. Let's do it a tiny bit more, a little bit less. Yeah, about there. So that's perfect. That's right in the middle of the range. So I'm going to leave it at that range, about 44.5 milliamps bias. And that's all checked. The 2 checks have been done. It's going to be time to plug this baby in and see if it makes some noise in a second. Alrighty, boys and girls, it's been a couple days and the amp is still here. Well, it didn't stay there all that time. But after I shot the last video where I was checking the voltages and bias and stuff, I tried to switch the amp on and see if it worked. And it didn't. There were a couple of things that I needed to look at. In fact, there was one major thing which I had overlooked. But I'm going to show you inside here and show you a couple of things that I did. And huge thanks to my friend Stefan Huther at Red Stuff Amplification. He actually helped me troubleshoot all the stuff and we got it all sorted. It was something I noticed on a different layout that actually fixed the amp, and then there was one more thing which happened which I needed to fix. So this is all part of like building an amp or anything from a kit. There may be some troubleshooting along the way, so be prepared for it. Alrighty, so what had happened was after I tested the voltage here and then the bias here, I tried to switch the amp on, put it out of standby onto the on position. Obviously had a guitar plugged in, had a load on there as well, and plugged it into a cab as well. And I wasn't getting any sound out of the first inputs. Now out of the second inputs, I was getting a little bit of sound only when I dimed the master. And it was a tiny bit of output I was getting. So Stefan helped me to sort this out. So the first thing that Stefan asked me to do was disconnect the middle pin on the treble and connect it directly to the middle pin of first volume 1 and then volume 2. And then check if I was getting an output signal. And I was, but again, only out of output 2. So we were getting some signal, but again, it wasn't kind of full beans volume. Then I connected all of that back up, and he asked me to check the inputs, as there might have been a problem with the inputs. So I actually took all 4 inputs out of the amplifier, and I rewired everything to make sure that everything was absolutely perfect. And I used a different scheme actually. This is the original scheme. I'll just adjust my camera. So this was the original scheme that was on the layout, and I actually did this layout, which is a little bit simpler, it's cleaner. So I changed it to that. Again, switching on the amp after that, same result, we weren't getting an output. Then I was kind of just tracing stuff around and looking at this layout again, and I was just looking around the tube bases, and I noticed this. You might be able to see that these 2 pins, which are pins 4 and 5, are actually connected on this layout. Now on this layout, you cannot see that. So that was the issue. I think there should be like just a different color there, just to bridge pins 4 and 5 on the layout. It'd be so helpful on this layout if that was there. So then I went back into the amplifier, and I bridged pins 4 and 5 on these 3 tubes. And basically I had messaged Stefan to ask about that, and he said yes, definitely that would mean that the heaters on the tubes aren't operating properly, hence we weren't getting volume. So once I did that, the amp switched on, I was getting volume, but another issue. I was getting oscillation from the amp, and it would basically play for like a second, and then it would go into this just feedback thing. And I'm actually going to show you a quick clip. This is what it did. And then it's staying there. So even I've turned off the standby, and if I turn it on again, it's doing that. And if I do input 1, I think it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah. So again, quick message to Stefan asking him what the issue could have been, and he said, I know exactly what it is. Switch the wires which are going to pin 3 on both of the tube bases. So switch this wire to this position, this wire to this position. And basically what I had done is wired up the output transformer to the opposite way round, and this is apparently polarity dependent. And what was happening was it was introducing positive feedback into it, which was then oscillating. So as soon as I did this, then plugged in, voila, we had sound. Beautiful sound. I am in the high input, input 1, so volume 1 working there. And I'm going to turn the treble down a little bit. It's a really beautiful sounding amp. And just to let you know, I am plugged into a 2-notes captor, 20 dB attenuation on there. That's all I'm using on there. Into 112 cab, which is loaded with a 1978 Celestion G1280 speaker. So really nice old broken in speaker. Alrighty, so the volume is at about 1 at the moment, and I'm getting this really nice clean sound.
If I do my coil splits. Beautiful, really awesome. Alrighty, let's start turning it up a little bit. So I am going to turn it up to about a quarter now. Very super cool. Alrighty, halfway up. Nice. Alrighty, turning it up to 3/4 now. Wow, the sound is so direct. It is absolutely amazing. Alrighty, volume on maximum on that first channel. So do that playthrough one more time. Wonderful, really cool. Alrighty, now I have a tone shift switch here, so I'm going to turn it back to about halfway. Actually, I'll do it cleaner. I'll do it about quarter way. So this is the stock position, which the layout suggested, and it sounds like this. Okay, position 2 with the tone shift. That's really nice. It rolls off a little bit of the high end, and also the bass is a little bit more controlled. All right, position 3 now. That's wonderful. That's going to be really helpful to dial in tone. It's warmest in that third position, brightest in first position. And that first position gives more perception of gain as well. So beautiful. And just to let you know, the presence is on about 4, bass is on 5, the mids are on about 7, the trebles on about 4, and the master I'm turning up as I go. Alright, I'm going to switch to the low input. So this is low input number 1. So immediately it feels like there's less treble, a little bit less gain as well, but a creamier tone. So halfway. Three-quarters. Beautiful, nice, and maximum. Gorgeous. More bass coming through, less treble. Sounds absolutely phenomenal like that. Alrighty, turn that one down. I'm going to plug into input number 2. This is the high input. So I'm going to start off with the volume at 1. So immediately a lot more bass on this channel, a lot more round sounding than channel 1, not as spiky in the high end. Alrighty, turning up to quarter. I love how immediate the sound is as well. Alrighty, this is halfway. Alright, three-quarters. Wow, very, very beefy tone, very big tone. Alrighty, maximum on the volume. Nice, really, really nice. Alright, turning it back to about a quarter and plugging into the low input. Nice, very, very rounded tone. And I guess I could turn up the treble now. And that does make a big difference. I'm going to turn it back down to that regular position and then I'll mess with it in a bit. So halfway with the volume. Let's do the playthrough one more time. Nice. Three-quarters. Maximum. A little bit more noise now. And if I EQ this, so turning the bass down, I'm going to turn the presence up and the treble up as well, more mids as well. Beautiful, really, really super versatile. Alrighty, next thing I'm going to do is bridge the channels. So I'm going to go and grab a patch lead for that. Alrighty, I've patched the channels now, and I'm in the high input on input 1. I have both of the volume controls at about a quarter, and I've left the EQ exactly where it is. So I'm going to have a listen to how it sounds with the channels patched. Now I can use both of these to affect the tone. So if I turn up volume 2, so this is halfway with volume 2. And halfway with volume 1 as well, so both volumes on about halfway. That is so cool. Alrighty, I'm going to turn volume 1 up to about 8 and volume 2 up to about 6. Let's see how that sounds. That's cool. A little bit more on volume 2. Essentially, mixing these two channels, you can control the amount of treble that's coming through with volume 1 and the amount of low end with volume 2. And it's really effective. It's really cool. Alrighty, I'm going to change the EQ a little bit. Let's turn this up, have a listen. I'm going to turn the presence down a little bit and treble down a little bit as well. Bass down a touch as well. So do that playthrough one more time. Gorgeous. Alrighty, one more control that I'm going to show you. I'm going to take the patch lead off, and I have this control which switches in a couple of electrolytic capacitors which are supposed to fatten up the tone. So I'll just put it on standby, take the patch lead out. I'm going to stay in number 1. I'll go to about halfway, leave the EQ where it is, just about. A little bit more presence there. All right. So. Okay, I'm going to switch into position 1, and this is going to add a little bit of fatness apparently. That's a really cool control. Now I don't know if this is actually coming across on the video, it might not actually pick up, but it's a very subtle thing. But it fattens up the low mids a little bit, and I can hear it from the speaker, just those low mids coming through a little bit more. Alrighty, I'm going to switch to the other position. I have 2 capacitors, so I've got 2 positions to switch to. Let's have a listen to this. Off again. On again. position 1 again. That's very, very cool. Again, I don't know if this is going to come across because it's quite subtle, but it's adding in different levels of fatness to the tone. There's low mids and a little bit more, not so much low end, but it's just low mids. So this position 1 is more than position 2, and then the middle position is with it off. Brilliant, all working. I'm so pleased with this. It sounds really, really awesome. And I've actually just got Softec tubes in here at the moment in the preamp just to test the amp out. When I actually chassis it up and everything, I'm going to put the mullards in there, 2 mullards, one in position 1 and one in position 2, and then a GE tube in position number 3. Then it'll sound even better than this. It sounds freaking awesome already.
By the way, the amp has acquired another switch, and this one's on the back. My friend Stefan at Red Stuff had suggested I try out actually bridging pin number 3 and pin number 8 on tube 1. He told me that it would change the tone and add a little bit more gain as well. So I'd temporarily hooked this switch up. I wanted to see what it sounded like with and without, and this switch is pretty awesome. It adds some low end when it's engaged, and it also adds a little bit more gain. So this is going to be a super versatile amp. Just lots of options for switching and stuff.
Alrighty, got my Phoenix into Maxon OD808, and I have patched both the high and low input ones with a Y cable which I made this morning. Yay! This is without the Maxon. This is how the amp sounds, and then I'll turn the Maxon on. Sounds great. So it's such a cool amp. Here it is with the Maxon. The overdrive and balance is at 12 o'clock. Tone's a little bit further down. Actually, I'll just put it on 12. Here we go.
So I had a really interesting idea for the cabinet for this amp, and I designed it in Shaper 3D on my iPad. So I decided on a 2-piece split design, and I wanted it to fit the amp really well. I didn't want there to be overhangs like on a regular small box Marshall. But this actually posed a couple of challenges, because the chassis actually has a couple of ears at the end which I needed to account for. But this is the design I came up with. Like I said, it's a 2-piece design. There's a top part, bottom part, and it's actually held together with these butterfly clips on the side. And it actually worked out really well once I built it. Looks great. I'll show you video and pictures in a second. feet on the bottom, handle on the top, and I decided to finger joint the edges as well. And basically the amp lives inside the cabinet, so taking the amp away, you can see the actual cabinet by itself, comprised of 3-piece top and sides, and you can see the handle and the butterfly clips floating there, and a base plate as well, which was separate. And basically this top part goes onto the bottom part and clips into place via the butterfly clips. Really elegant solution, loved the design, and now I just needed to make it a reality. So for the cabinet, I have decided to finger joint it, and here's a test piece. This is the second test piece actually. I did a quick test yesterday, and basically I have built this this jig, which is just made by out of, I should say, 2 centimeter by 2 centimeter battens, and it essentially has some longer pieces, shorter pieces. So essentially the router bit fits in between here. It is a router bit with a collar on it, and then I've just got to set it to the correct depth, which I have worked out, and basically it's creating this beautiful finger joint. Now this is just a rough piece of wood, so there are some splinters and stuff. On this first one I hadn't taped up everything. On the second one I had actually taped everything up, front and back, and it came out really super clean. And on the actual chassis, or cabinet I should say, these will be on the inside, so they won't even be noticeable. Alrighty, I'm going to get on and do that to the actual pieces, which are down there. I had completely forgotten to record video of actually putting the cabinet together, but here are a couple of pictures, and it looked great, fit really well. Took a little bit of finagling to get right. I needed to make some changes, probably why I didn't record it, but it all came together really well in the end. Alrighty, the enclosure's almost done. I have just coated this in this wonderful floor oil, and it's given me the color that I wanted it to look like this. It looks so cool. So I'm going to leave this for a day or so, and then I'm going to polish it up and it'll be ready to put together. And there's the base of it as well. It's going to look really good. And basically this is all going to be black hardware on here. So if I find one of the latches, that's going to kind of look like that, so it's going to contrast really well, which is why I wanted it this color. So the enclosure's pretty much done, then I will put all of the hardware on, and it'll be ready to put the whole amp together. Oh, into these holes I'm going to put some rev nuts as well, and that's going to hold the butterfly latches in place. All going to work really well. I've test fitted it and it's working beautifully. And there you go, the case is all done. This looks really cool. Just got to do the grill. I'm still waiting for that to be delivered. But check this out. The butterfly clips on both sides. And they are working really well. The handle on the top. And I've used all these hex bolts. These are M5 bolts. These are M4 bolts holding these in. Which I can quickly show you. They're down there. They're M4 bolts, and I've got regular screws which are quite long going into the wood there. And basically this just comes down, locks into place, and there you go. And it feels pretty steady as well. You know, I can pick it up, it's all staying together, feeling really secure. There's going to be 4 more bolts which actually hold the chassis in, and they're going to come through here and actually go into the wood a little bit as well. So that's going to secure the whole thing even more. Alright, time to put the amp into here. And there you go. This amp looks so smart. I love the way it looks. The cabinet came out absolutely fantastic. I love the way this grill looks. It's exactly the look I wanted to go for. It's kind of got a vintage modern thing going on. This logo, wow, that is so awesome. This was 3D printed. I found a guy on Etsy. His name is Reese, and 3D printed this logo, which looks excellent. Really cool. And matches the color scheme. This is a little logo which my friend Stefan at Red Stuff Amps CNC'd for me, which looks awesome. Kind of covers the hole which is behind there, which I was going to put a switch into. I didn't need it in the end. I have the two switches there, the tone stack switch, which I'm going to demonstrate in a second, because I'm guessing you want to hear what this sounds like, right? This is really effective. Now I'll kind of walk you through the options in a second. And then I've got the three-way switch, which I've called EVH1, EVH2. That's the fat cap switch. And this cabinet works really well with the butterfly clips. This whole thing just comes off when I need it to. And I have another logo here as well. Again, my friend Stefan had CNC'd this. Looks so awesome. Right under the handle there. Perfect place for it. So there you go. And there is one more switch on the back. So I'm going to flip it around. I have access to everything back here. I kept it open. It looks really good like that as well. There is one switch there, which I have called the Miyagi Switch. It's a wax on, wax off. Now this is a very special switch because when it's in wax off position, it's the regular Plexi mode. And when it's on wax on mode, there's a little bit more gain and a little bit more low end as well. Really kind of kicks in some thump. I love it in this wax on mode. So that's a Miyagi Switch, yeah. It's a secret switch, I can't tell you what I've done with it. But it's a very simple mod. And this is the external bias points. These work really beautifully well. I've actually marked off where my 40 millivolt bias is on the dial there. I used this to bias the amp properly, and it is in its absolute sweet spot now. It's working so well. So I'm guessing you want to hear what this sounds like. I want to show you. I'm going to plug in and give you some sounds from it. So I'm going to use my Frankenstrat guitar, which is just awesome. It has a Pariah Pasadena series black pickup in the bridge, and I'm also going to plug into my Ibanez Tube Screamer, which works beautifully with the amp. So let me plug in and turn up the volume. Yeah. Also, I'm going to use my attenuator, which is the Boss Tube Amp Expander. And also set up a wet dry signal through this, going into this Caitlin Bread Bell Epoch, then into the Hot Tone Loudster, and then into a second cab, which is down there. So you'll get to hear a little bit of delay as well.
So there you go, the amp is done, sounding absolutely amazing. You heard all the sounds. It cleans up really well with the guitar volume. You know, it's a Plexi after all, that's what they're supposed to do. You know, the amazing thing about this amplifier, every single guitar and pickup I plug into it, it sounds different, and more so than any other amp I have ever plugged into. And I guess that's the charm of the old Plexi. You know, it translates guitars and sounds really, really well. I'm glad I upgraded the transformers. They sound absolutely phenomenal. The amp just in general is super, super, super quiet. No hiss, no hum, you know, even at maximum volume, which is what I was playing at. I completely forgot to turn this down because there's not really much point. You may as well just turn it up and then, you know, turn your guitar volume down. It does pretty much the same thing. Didn't jump the channels. It sounds really good when you do jump channels, and the other, you know, the second channel just sounds a lot bassier, a lot more low end on it. And jumping the channels, I actually use a Y cable rather than a jumper between the low input on the first one and the high input on the second one. So I just use a Y cable, which I've got somewhere around here, which I made. That's my Y cable, but I don't really need it because I've tried it by just plugging into the high input on the first channel, and there's so much gain on tap. And obviously when you jump the channels and you can combine them, you get very, very unique sounds because the second channel is darker sounding, so you can add in some low end. That's the special thing about this switch, which is the EVH switch, adds low end in. And also the Miyagi Switch at the back adds low end as well, which is just phenomenal. Absolutely love this amp. It has become a firm favorite. I am going to be recording with it so much. So was it worth doing? It took me a few months to do. It cost me in the end probably about £550, which is about $700 odd. Yes, definitely, because you know what, if I went out to buy a 69 Plexi lead, and I've checked this on Reverb, we're talking north of like, you know, 4 or 5 grand for one in good condition. This one's in brand new condition with some phenomenal stuff in there, which is going to keep it safe, which is making it operate fantastically well and sounding absolutely beautiful. So there you go, guys. Check it out on the Modulus website. They have done a phenomenal job of putting together this kit. Love building it. I am sure I am going to be doing some more kits in the future. I have another amp which I'm going to actually modify, which is that Jet City back there. That's my next project before I do another Modulus amp. But in the meantime, this has been such a pleasure to do. There you go. That's my 69 Plexi, which I have called JP69. Yeah! And finally, some thank yous. Huge thank you to my friend Stefan Huffer at Red Stuff Amplification. He was such an awesome guy right through this. Helped me so much advice. It's awesome to have an amp guy on speed dial. Helped me out so much. Shout out for my very good friend Bryce Boyd at Epic Amplification as well. Both these guys inspired me to do this. And also the guitarologist, Brad the guitarologist. Yeah, watching his stuff over the last couple of years really has kind of just invigorated my kind of want to build amplifiers and mess with them and modify them and stuff like that. And finally, shout out to Jason Tong over at Headfirst Amplification as well. I have actually ordered a board from one of his amplifiers, his amp builds, so that will be arriving at some stage, and I will be doing a video on the amp which I eventually build. Don't know when I'm going to do it because I've got the Jet City to do first, and then I'll get to it at some point. Yeah. These guys inspire me to do this, and it's awesome. I love doing it. So more will be coming at some point. Alright guys, have a fantastic day and more videos to follow. See you later. Bye.